What's going on, people? UFC 162 is over. I've finished crying about it, finished moaning about it. This video is not really going to reference that too much. We want to go on and talk a little bit more about the documentary Like Water. This is a documentary that was made prior to Anderson Silva's loss this past weekend. It was made... you know what, it would have been a good idea for me to find out what year and tell you. I think it was made about 2011 or 2012. And I watched it last year, and I remember, you know, being a huge MMA fan, I remember hearing about this documentary, and then finally when I got my hands on a copy, I thought, yes. And I watched it in horror. It was about an hour and 20 minutes, and it didn't give me any in-depth into what was then the unbeaten and still is one of the greatest competitive mixed martial artists ever. The documentary basically was, I call it a glorified countdown documentary. And for those of you that don't watch enough UFC, you won't know what that means. It's like, when there are big fights coming up, we have these little 10-minute, 20-minute countdown documentaries where they go over, they talk to the fighter, the fighter's camp, the fighter's family, find out a little bit about what makes that fighter fight, what makes that fighter get into the certain mind frame that they've got to be in to do what they do in the cage. And, those are pretty insightful things. They show you a little bit of training and all that good stuff. The guy hugging his family, and hopefully he goes out to win because he loves his family or whatever the case may be. Well, Like Water, this documentary that was supposed to give me further insight into this amazing Muay Thai, Taekwondo, striking machine, which is Anderson Silva, it really didn't do that for me. It was a glorified countdown to Anderson Silva's first fight with Chael Sonnen. It was an interesting fight. It was an interesting build-up because Chael Sonnen, he has such a mouthpiece on him. He's a great promoter in terms of fights. He answers questions with a very, very dry sense of humour. Sometimes will keep a very straight face and tell you something that is absolutely ludicrous, but it just makes for really interesting stories. Sometimes it rubs certain people the wrong way, but in all honesty, it puts bums on seats and people want to watch, people want to pay, people want to sign up, subscribe and check out what happens, whether you want to see Chael win or lose, And the fight itself was filled with drama because Anderson Silva, who pretty much since 2006, when he won the title, has pretty much dominated every single fighter and pretty much every single round up until then, he actually did not look as good against Anderson Silva, against Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen took him down at will, seemed to ground and pound on him for like four and a half rounds, and finally in the fifth round, with just a few minutes to go, Anderson caught him in a triangle and choked him out and won the fight. Now, lots of people, are like, yeah, down in Anderson Silva for that. Let me just say quickly, I want to stay on the documentary. I don't want to go off onto any other tangent, but let me just say that let's not get it twisted. Anderson Silva, he was fighting with, at the time, I think it was a cracked rib, okay? And he had injured himself prior to the fight. So that rib injury he picked up prior to the fight. And secondly, people seem to, when they go back in history, they just say, oh, do you remember when Chael Sonnen nearly beat Anderson Silva? Yeah, on steroids. You know what I mean? Like, why, if we're going to talk about a historic thing in MMA, let's talk about it and let's be absolutely 360 degrees with the information. This guy was on PEDs and he was suspended, and after his suspension, he had a sloppy fight against Michael Bisping. Chael Sonnen, as much as I love his character, I find him very entertaining, is also one of those guys who claims that he requires testosterone replacement, TRT, not TNT, TRT, to fight, testosterone replacement therapy. So that in itself is a bit controversial, that why does a man who is clearly not in a nursing home require that kind of replacement therapy, but it is what it is. And still, when he went in against Anderson Silva the second time, he did in no way, shape or form did he perform as well as he did the first time, you know. Now, that's still not taken away from Chael Sonnen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a formidable opponent, good wrestler. He could definitely beat me up if we got into a cage. But let me just say, only in MMA, not in kickboxing. I'd take him in kickboxing. I don't care. I'm brave enough to take him in a kickboxing fight. Please don't come looking for me. Anyway, no, let's keep it 100. Chael Sonnen was on drugs when he fought Anderson Silva. Second time around, Anderson Silva beat the living daylights out of him. Period. End of story. Okay? Now, going back to this documentary, I was waiting, okay, to find out some amazing stuff about this amazing fighter. I found out nothing. I found out he's got a nice big house in Brazil. I found out he's got a bunch of kids with a lady he's been with since his teens. You know, I saw the usual suspects, the Nogueira brothers, and, you know, a couple of people from the Black House gym, which is a gym that he used to train in, and a couple of people from his shooter box days. And, you know, you see a few of them, but they don't really go into it. In fact, they were interviewing a lot of the new trainers, which I found really bizarre, like new young trainers. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in them. I want to find out. There's one black bald guy whose name I don't know, and it's not Rafael Cordeiro. It's some other guy. He's Brazilian as well. And he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And he's also... I think he also carries a very high ranking belt in judo, and he trained Anderson Silva for some years and has been involved in Anderson Silva's training on and off ever since then. He's an interesting character because this guy is probably in his 50s, but he's built like a brick house, and you don't want it with him. I don't care if you're 22 and you lift weights every day and you go to the boxing gym. You definitely do not want it with this guy. He's just menacing. And, you know, they didn't take any of these interesting characters. Anderson Silva used to be a part of Shooter Box. I would have thought it would have been an interesting take to go back to those Shooter Box days, the Ninja Hua, the Shogun Hua, Ninja Hua, Shogun Hua, Vanderlei Silva, all those guys from back in the day, and what they did back then, and, you know, how that somehow may have affected Anderson Silva coming out and being the kind of fight that he is today. But no, they didn't. They just sort of like, you know, followed Anderson Silva around, followed Chael Sonnen around. They trained for the fight, they showed the fight, Anderson won the fight, and then he gives like a few one-liners at the end of it, and that was that. It was a bit of a letdown for me, but that's only for me because I'm one of those fanatics. I mean, when I'm not working, if I'm not working or sleeping or eating, I'm probably online watching fights that I've watched 1,000 times, or watching countdown videos that I've watched before, or whatever it is. Always looking for some little nuance that might give me the edge in terms of, you know, saying what I say about fighters. So, you know, I guess watching like water, I was expecting some huge insight into this very, very, you know, dominating force in MMA, and I didn't see it. Also, I think I compared that documentary to a TV documentary that was made on Fedor Emelianenko several years ago called The Baddest Man on the Planet. And all these documentaries you can find on YouTube, by the way. You know, they might still be up, they might have been taken down, but if you search, you can find them. And that documentary was very insightful. You got to remember, I'm an English speaker. I don't speak Portuguese and I don't speak Russian. So sometimes there's a bit of a mystique because, you know, there are things that are lost in translation. You know, we don't understand the facial expressions. We don't understand their form of sarcasm or their form of humour, or even their threats. You know, when you're talking to people from different countries and different backgrounds, what might seem overtly threatening in English or in America is not what would be threatening, say, in another language. And I mean, a perfect example is me. I'm, a British-born cat living here in the US, and whenever I get into altercations or whenever I get upset about certain things, I sometimes go off on people, and they have no idea that I'm going off because they're not used to the tone of voice. They're not used to, they don't know what a threatening inflection in my voice would sound like. They have no idea, So, I could be telling someone like, I'm really upset, and they're like, oh Lord, he sounds cute, which is what I hear all the time, which is really, And if that's with a nation where we share the same language, we just have different accents and different expressions for things, but we share the same language, how much more with Portuguese or Russian? But yet, with Fedor Emelianenko's documentary, I still felt like I understood him. I felt like I got to the core of what made that man tick. He's a strong believer in God, strong believer in his family, and strong believer in country. He's friends with Vladimir Putin. He embraces Sambo, which is the Russian it's almost like a Russian form of jiu-jitsu. He, strong student in kickboxing, and his build is extremely deceitful, almost like Anderson Silva's build, but even kind of like more deceitful than Anderson Silva's. Anderson Silva looks lean and looks like he's fit, but Emelianenko looks even less threatening, and yet this man dominated his MMA landscape for 10 years before he had a string of losses and then subsequently quit the game. So, to me, that was what I was looking for. The information I got from the Baddest Man Alive documentary was what I was hoping to see in the Like Water documentary. Didn't get it. Now, recently, there was, just before this fight, this UFC 162, there was a half-hour TV show or something with Karen Bryant on Fuel TV, and I think they posted it up on... Actually, I know they posted it up on YouTube, and I think it was called something like Anderson Silva All Angles or something like that. Not All Access, All Angles, or something, angles in the title anyway. And that was a little bit better because Anderson Silva has now moved over here to the States, and he is learning English. And so slowly but surely, he's starting to, I'm starting to understand him more, because a lot of things are lost in translation. You can have an interpreter right there. We always joke about it, me and my MMA friends, we joke that, Anderson Silva or someone who speaks another language will speak for like 2 minutes, and then you turn the mic to the interpreter and he'll just say something in like 5 seconds. Oh, he basically said he loves America. I'm like, but he spoke for 2 minutes. He must have said more than that, So, I think the language barrier is definitely helping me to understand Anderson Silva more. That All Angles show was more insightful, but this Like Water, which was actually a feature documentary on Anderson Silva, to me, it just didn't give me the insight that I was really looking for. And in a way, it actually fueled me and fired me up, because I'm a filmmaker myself, and so it fired me up to reach out to a few people. I'm still in talks myself, but at some stage, should things go the way that I plan for them to go, then I will hopefully make the kind of documentary on Anderson Silva that I feel is worthy of a man of his talents and his accomplishments. So I will keep you posted. I'm not going to say look out for the documentary right now, because I know that I've got other things on my plate and other things that I'm chasing. But just stay tuned to your boy. Put it that way, because at some stage these are things that I feel very strongly about. These are things that I love a great deal. I have a huge passion for, and hopefully at some stage I'll be able to put out a documentary that will answer the questions that I don't feel Like Water answered. All right. Anyway, that's my review for Like Water. If you're an Anderson Silva fan or an MMA fan, it's still worth watching, but as I said, I just crave a lot more in terms of information, and I didn't get it. So it's not a bad documentary, even though I sound bitter. But it's not a great one either. But check it out if you get a chance. All right, I'm out. Take care of yourselves. Peace.